ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। We read from verse 64. सर्वगुह्यतमं भूयः सर्वगुह्यतमं भूयः शृणु मे परमं वचः शृणु मे परमं वचः। इष्टोऽसि मे दृढमिति इष्टोऽसि मे दृढमिति ततो वक्ष्यामि ते हितं ततो वक्ष्यामि ते हितं। मन्मना भव मद्भक्तः मन्मना भव मद्भक्तः मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु। मामे वैष्यसि सत्यन्ते मामे वैष्यसि सत्यन्ते प्रतिजाने प्रियोऽसि मे प्रतिजाने प्रियोऽसि मे। सर्वगुह्यतमं भूयः शृणु मे परमं वचः। Here Arjuna, again listen to my highest utterance, which is the most profound of the secrets. And this is what I am again telling you, since you are extremely dear to me, and therefore I shall speak to you of that which is most beneficial to you, which means that I am going to summarize for you the whole teaching in the next two verses. Verse 65, Manmanabha Mad Bhaktaha Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. Here Arjuna, you have your mind fixed on me. Be devoted to me. May you perform all your actions as an offering to me, and may you always bow down to me. So we discussed in the morning, the first step is to fix our mind in the Lord, meaning learn about Him. Think about Him, learn about Him. And more we learn about His glories, and more we learn about how He is so woven in my life, how I am constantly enjoying His grace, and therefore how I am what I am on account of the Lord. And thus I see His contribution, a constant contribution in my life, that arises in me a sense of gratitude, and as I learn about His greatness, a reverence arises, and this is how I discover a devotion in my heart for the Lord by learning more and more about Him. And how do I express that devotion? In the form of service to the Lord. So therefore first, learning about Him, knowing Him. As a result of which, there is devotion. As a result of which, there is service. As a result of which, there is this offering. And thus, constantly I get offered to the Lord. In this way, what is ego? Which is what separates you from me. As it gets offered, Mameva Eshasi, you will come to me. That means that you will become me. There is no doubt about that. Satyam te pratijane priyosi me. And this is my pratigna. This is my promise to you. And truly the promise to you that you will attain to me, meaning you will become one with me. There is no doubt about that. So thus, in that verse 65, Lord Krishna summarized what we call the Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion through action, that is, by performing actions in the spirit of devotion. As we said, the Karma Yoga has been summarized. And now, in the second verse, in the verse 66, Lord Krishna summarizes Jnana Yoga, for which the means is renunciation. Bhakti Yoga, for which the means is karma or action, and Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, for which the means is renunciation. And that is being summarized in the verse 66. Sarvadharman parityajya Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Mamekam sharanam vraja Ahantva sarva papebhyah Ahantva sarva papebhyah Mokshayishyami ma shuchah Mokshayishyami ma shuchah. Sarva dharman parityajya, abandoning all the dharmas. Parityajya, parisamantatyajya, completely abandoning all the dharmas. Mam ekam sharanam vraja, may you take refuge into me alone. So take refuge in me alone. Mam ekam sharanam vraja, take sharanam, refuge in Mam, in me alone and nothing else. So sarva dharman parityaja, abandoning all the dharma. The use of the word dharma here does cause confusion sometimes. Swamiji, Lord Krishna says, give up all the dharma. What does it mean? Does it mean that we should give up dharma such as Hinduism? This is what is being said. Or dharma that we follow, because the word dharma is generally translated as religion. Give up all your religions. You are neither Hindu, nor a Muslim, nor a Jew, nor a this. Is that what it meant here? What is meant by dharma? Here, Shankaracharya ji interprets the word dharma as karma. So because dharma means virtue, in order for you to have the virtue, you must perform a virtuous action. And therefore, by dharma is interpreted a virtuous action. And therefore, give up even all those, give up all the actions. Give up all the rights. Give up now all the worship. What is meant is that the worship is now done at two stages. So far I was performing worship of the Lord through my actions. Lord Krishna says, give up that worship and now perform the worship at a little higher level. It is worship of Lord, no doubt. But so far in the previous verse, the worship that was prescribed was by way of action. Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru, perform all your actions as an offering to me. So the first stage is to perform the worship of the Lord in the form of service, in the form of making actual offering, which is that is the worship that involves duality. So therefore that is the worship what we call Saguna Brahma, Brahman or God with attributes. Because that's the one I can serve. This question often arises in the minds of students of Vedanta. Swamiji Vedanta teaches us that I am Brahma, that God is my very self. Then who is to worship whom? How can I worship God? He is my own self. I am God, or God is my own self. How can I worship Him? But that has to become the ultimate realization on my part. But accepting the reality as it obtains from me right now, at this time, when I think of God, I never think of I, always think of God as someone different from me. And therefore that word God does not create in me today the idea of I. When the word God is used, it creates in me an idea that God is the one who is a creator, sustainer, dissolver, omniscient, omnipresent, all-powerful, all-pervasive. That's the idea of the word God that is created in my mind. And so I accept that is the reality obtaining today. And therefore the duality is a reality at this time, even though in the ultimate sense it is not true, but that is the truth for me right now. And therefore I accept it. So how do I relate or how do I function in the duality so that progressively I become free from duality or I grow out of duality? So that is what Lord Krishna said, a life of yoga or life of worship. And so my interaction with the world in the realm of duality would be of the nature of worshipping the Lord who is manifest as His world. Jagataha ishadhi yukta sevanam. Jagataha sevanam, serving the world. With his dhi, with the bhavana, with the attitude that it is nothing but the manifestation of Lord, which is what it is. And therefore the first level of devotion, bhakti, first level of bhakti or devotion is through action. It can be action which is physical action, it can be action at the level of speech, it can be action at the level of mind. So when you perform the rituals, well, it is worshipful action at the level of body. And when I recite His names and His stotras and hymns, it is a worshipful action at the level of speech. And I can perform mental worship, which is what we call meditation. So what is meant by meditation is, one kind of meditation is mental worship of the Lord. We don't like the meditations of just gazing someplace and stuff like that, The meditation must have God in there in some way or the other, and therefore ideally meditation should be worship of the Lord, mental worship of the Lord. It is worship, but then each level of worship becomes subtler than the previous one. Kayavang manah karyamuttamam pujanam japas chintanam kramat. Kayavang manah, at the level of body, the worship, which is somewhat grosser. Then that becomes a little subtle at the level of speech. And then it becomes even subtle at the level of mind. So when I am performing act of worship at the level of body, the speech also is involved and the mind also is involved. And therefore, mind has much more scope of wandering. The field of thinking or wandering of the mind is much wider, and therefore it is an easier form of worship because it requires less subtlety and less focus of the mind. And then I graduate into the worship at the level of speech. At that time the body is not involved, only mind and speech are involved. Therefore, the scope of wandering the mind is reduced somewhat, therefore it requires a more focused mind. And then when I perform worship at the level of mind, that is extremely subtle and therefore requires much more focus. And now the field of activity of the mind has become extremely narrow. So this is the worship at the level of body, which is the rituals, at the level of speech, which is all the chantings and recitals, at the level of mind, in the form of mental worship. All this was the subject matter of the verse 65. Now you must graduate further. So far the worship was in the realm of duality, that is, I am the devotee and Lord is the one whom I worship. Now next level of worship should turn into the worship as non-duality. And now, how do I worship God, which is my own self? Naturally, that cannot be in form of action. I cannot serve myself. I cannot praise myself in the sense that now that the worship has to now to be of a different level when I am now worshipping Lord who is my own self. What is the nature of that worship? Nature of that worship is in the form of knowledge. So then Lord has to be known as myself. So far the Lord was the object of worship, someone different from me. Because as long as I look upon myself as an individual being, in the 12th chapter Lord Krishna said, Kleshu dhikatarastesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavad bhirvapyate. As long as there is a strong attachment to the body, as long as I have a strong sense of individuality, so long definitely there is a great distance between myself and the Lord, and so long it is very difficult to look upon Lord as my own self. To the extent that my own thought of myself becomes less and less qualified, that is, my understanding of myself becomes less and less qualified, then I can worship the Lord who is also free from qualification. So, therefore, Vedanta teaches God and not two forms, but let's say the two stages. That this whole manifestation involving all the qualities and attributes and names and forms is also manifestation of Lord. We say that is a Lord with attributes. But ultimately the attributes are only a projection, and therefore the ultimate nature of Lord is free from attributes. So when I look upon myself as the one possessing many attributes, then naturally the worship is also of the Lord possessed of attributes. And as I discover myself as possessed of less and less attributes, then I become the worshipper of the Lord who is beyond the attributes. Evam satatayuktaye bhaktastvām paryupasade yechapyakṣarma vyaktam tesham ke yoga vittamaha. The 12th chapter opened with the question of Arjuna. So Lord, those who worship you with attributes, and those who contemplate upon you as their own self, of them, which are the better, greater yogis? Lord Krishna said there is nobody greater, depending upon where you are. And so, if you want to travel from here to Chicago, then you ride from here to the airport in the car, and from there you ride in the plane. So, Swamiji, which are superior people? The one riding in the car or one riding in the plane? You may say one riding in plane is superior, provided you are at the airport. But if you are in the Gurukulam, then what? Then one riding in the car is superior to one riding in the plane, but you can't ride in the plane. So what is best? There is no such thing as best. And therefore the first level of reaching Chicago is to drive in the motor car from the Gurukulam to the airport. Then the second level is to fly from one airport to the other. Similarly, the first level of worship is tuning up with the Lord, identifying with the Lord. And that is how slowly becoming free from identification with his individuality. Mam namaskuru. Bowing down to the Lord. Meaning that my identification to my sense of individuality becomes less and less, and my identification with Lord becomes more and more. And thus, when I appreciate the Lord as manifest in the names and forms, that is Lord with attributes, then I am now ready as my own self. Therefore, the first level of worship is in the form of action, which is what we call act of worship. The second level of worship will be contemplation upon the Lord as my own self. And that would involve Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. Anyway, it must be on the other side, but the thing is that a karma yogi graduates into a sannyasi, Vividisha sannyasi, and he graduates into a Vidvat sannyasi. So, that is second level of worship is what is being said. This is how Shankaracharya, the great commentator, explains these two verses. So Lord Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. You have all the attributes. So, word dharma can be understood in different ways. So we said karma yoga, that's the first level of worship, which results into, we said vividisha sannyasa, which means renunciation of all the duties. That is renunciation of the external form of worship. The worship does not go, understand? I still remain a devotee of the Lord, but now a devotee in a different way. Formerly my devotion was expressed in the form of action. Now my devotion will be expressed in the form of contemplation. So we say that bhakti is always there. A karma yogi also is a bhakta, and a sannyasi also is a bhakta. Both are sannyasis as well, as a matter of fact, because renunciation is involved in both the cases, but the level of renunciation changes. That I am not this individual ego, I am in fact that Purusha. I am the very person, I am the very consciousness, different from personality, the Prakriti. And now I am ready therefore to distinguish between the person and the personality. And that is done through the vichara, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. So that is sannyasa of second level. Sarva dharman parityajya. Hey Arjuna, therefore, let a time come when you even give up those rituals. That is, give up that form of worship involving duality. Not only rituals, anything. Give up now the form of worship involving duality and now be Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Now you worship me as your own self. Ekam. Worship me as the one who is not different from you. How can you worship now? What is the nature of that worship? That nature of worship cannot be in the form of an action, understand? It is a worship in the form of giving up the action. Because action always the actor. Actor means always involves the sense of the agent of action. The action always, the karma always involves karta or agent of action. And that current stage you discover the fact that I am akarta, the self is actionless. Because understood in two ways. The first immediate is that he is the one under whose rule the whole universe functions. He is the very order, and in keeping with the order, every element, the whole universe functions, and therefore the sun shines because of that order, the fire burns because of that order, the wind blows because of the order, the water flows, and everything is what it is, and whatever it is doing is because of that order. So he is Ishvara, he is a ruler. And by his order, everything is governed. So he is the ordainer. This is when we look at Ishvara. But if we look at these things from the standpoint of God himself, then what? If he has to really control the whole universe, anybody, try to rule anybody. Because nobody wants to be ruled, basically. Nobody wants to be ruled. And therefore, if you want to rule somebody, in some way you have to create some kind of a strain, because you are depriving him of the freedom of not being ruled, and you are ruling. And therefore, ruling always involves some stress, some kind of an imposition. So can you imagine a God who is ruling this whole universe consisting of countless galaxies, each galaxy consisting of billions of stars, and each star having, can you imagine a God trying to control the whole thing? Everybody is trying to run away in some ways and he wants to hold everything together. What an amount of force he must exercise. He will get tired, will it not? As Swamiji says, if God also has to go to work and has to go to office to work, someday he will also require some vacation. And therefore, ideally, what should be the nature of the ruling? So therefore, if we analyze, what should the ruling be? It should be a ruling such as that does not involve any exertion at all, is it not so? And therefore, the rule of the ordinator, who is Lord Narayana or Vishnu, is shown as reclining in his serpent bed, in his yoga nidra, doing nothing. Which means that for keeping the whole universe under control, for maintaining order, he doesn't have to do anything. What does it mean? It means that it all happens merely in his presence. And therefore, in ultimate reality, he is what? He is free from any action at all. He is actionless. He is actionless. He is free from attributes. He is merely of the nature of presence. Maya adhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. In the 9th chapter, Lord Krishna said, it is in my presence. It is my presence that is consciousness, and that this prakriti or this energy of the matter performs the activities of creation, sustenance and resolution. And that means I do not do anything. So actionlessness is the ultimate reality. If you look at God from his standpoint of view, what will find? He does nothing. He is actionless. Such a powerful presence it must be that in the presence everything gets done. And therefore, ultimate nature of God has to be free from action, free from every exertion, and ever free from every attribute. That's the ultimate reality of God. So first level of discovery of God is to discover that everything is God. The whole manifest creation is manifestation of God. This is the first level of discovery, and that is done by karma yoga, that is performing worship through action. The second level of discovery is what? That Lord is beyond all the attributes. All the attributes are mithya. In the beginning, Lord is with all the attributes. Ultimately, the attributes are merely appearance. And what there is nothing but the one that is free from attributes. And who is it? He is my very self. As we've been saying, there's only one thing that is really free from all the attributes, and that is I. Because I can assume a variety of roles. Now I is a speaker, then I is a listener, then I is an eater, then he is a talker, then he is a thinker, then he is a seer. One can assume all these different roles only when one is free from all the roles. And therefore the I or the ego that assumes all this variety of roles constantly must be by himself free from every role, free from every attribute. Like an actor who puts on variety of costumes and performs different roles, but himself is free from all the roles. The roles are all dependent upon him, but he is independent of them. And therefore, there is only one thing that is devoid of all the attributes, and that is I. If God is devoid of all the attributes, the only where he can be, only place he can be is I. And therefore, the next level of worship is to contemplate upon the Lord as my own self. And that requires me, and that is what is that? What is myself? Attributeless, actionless. And therefore to know the Lord as a self, as actionless, the way is to give up the actions. Because to perform the action always requires me to assume the sense of doership. Unless I become even a devotee also is a doer of actions. So unless I accept the doership, I cannot perform deliberate action. And therefore, to discover the self that is free from doership, therefore Shankaracharya says, the next step is to give up all duties. So dharma here means all the virtuous actions, all the duties. Give up even the sense of doership. Mam ekam sharam vraja. So vraja means actually, so come to me. In Vedanta, all the verbs involving motion are always interpreted as the verbs of knowledge. That means, Mam ekam sharam vraja means what? That know me me as Mamekam, as me who is one, non-dual. Understand, Arjuna, that and know that I am not different from you. I am your very self, and therefore now worship me as your own self. And the way to worship is know this fact that I am your own self. So far, I was the object of your worship. Next is recognize this fact that I am your own self. That means do not keep me away from me, Lord Krishna says. It is all right to begin the worship in the realm of duality, but ultimately let there be no distance between you and I. And that is how the love always culminates into non-duality, is it not so? That is really the culmination of love, where the object of love is not different from me. And so, sarva dharman, dharma can be interpreted as karma. So that all the forms of worship involving action is given up. And now I take up the form of worship involving the contemplation upon the Lord, which is Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. And before that also we can understand this Sharanam, refuge of the Lord. In fact, so Madhusudan Saraswati explains here that, see, Lord Krishna says that Sharanagati is the ultimate thing. Sharanagati means surrendering to the Lord. Surrender unto me, take refuge of me into me. So understand, surrender is involved at every stage. Even when I am performing karma yoga, then also surrender is involved. Then the surrender is of my likes and dislikes. Surrendering of this rajas and tamas, surrendering of these impulses involved. And finally, surrender of the very ego, and therefore Sharanagati. Except that in the first case, the surrender is in the form of action. In the second case, the surrender is in the form of knowledge. And therefore Lord Krishna says, know me as Ekam. Ekam means one, and one means non-dual. Know that there is not one God, but that there is only God. That means do not exclude yourself now. So far when I was worshipping God, I excluded myself. I was a devotee. Recognize that you are not different from me, and therefore that there is no distance between you and I. Now recognize the non-duality between the two, and by study of the scriptures, contemplation upon these statements of the scriptures. Tattvamasi, that's what Aham Brahmasmi, this is what the Upanishad says, the Aham, the I is Brahman. And that's a statement which reveals the identity between Aham, I, and Brahma, God. And that is an unconditional identity. There are many other teachers of Vedanta who put some conditions in the identity. Oh, Upanishad says that God and you are one, but still that means that you are part of Him. Or you are His servant. Or you are close to Him. Something like that. But Shankaracharya says, no. One means one, without any qualification. Who am I? I am the person having a personality. And who is God? Also a person having a personality. I am a person having a little personality of this body-mind complex. And Lord is a person having the total personality of what we call Maya. So the whole universe is His personality. And that's the reason why very often the universe is even described as the body of the Lord. Heavens is His head, and earth are the feet, and the space is His body. Sun and moon are the eyes. In this manner, they describe the whole universe as the body of the Lord. And so, I have this little body, that is my personality, and Lord's personality is the totality, it is His personality. But the person that I am is the person that Lord is, and that there is no distance at all. So, discover the identity at the level of person. And when can that identity be discovered? Only when I give up the identification with my personality. So, sarva dharman parityajya, give up all your attributes, give up your identifications. Having given up the karma, now start giving up the identification with this body-mind complex, giving up identification with the personality. And that's what we are taught. Atma, anatma, vivekaha, a discrimination between the self and the non-self. Recognize that this body, sense organs, mind, intellect, this complex is comparable to a costume. You are not that. You are not the body. The body belongs to you, but you are not the body. Similarly, sense organs, mind, intellect, all of these are the tools or instruments given to you, but then you are not that. Recognize thus the difference between you and this personality. And then recognize that that person that you are is the person that I am. Kshetrajnam chapso, in 13th chapter, Lord Krishna said this. Idam shariram kaunte kshetramitya vidhiyate etadyo vetitam prahu kshetrajnah iti tadvidah. Hey Kaunteya, this body, this gross and subtle body is called kshetra, is a field of knowledge. Etadyo vetitam prahu kshetrajnah tadvidah. The one who is the knower of the kshetra, the knower of the personality, is called the kshetrajna. Is called the self. Kshetrajnam chavimam vidhi. Discovery is the ultimate surrender. Then everything has been given up. Ultimately, all my sense of individuality is given up. The sense of individuality that arises from identification with this personality, and therefore giving up identification with this body-mind complex is the ultimate surrender, which culminates into discovery that Lord is my own self. I am not different from him. Therefore it was said, Mameva eshyasi, that you will reach me. There is no doubt about that. And this kind of surrender Lord Krishna is saying all along. Mayyeva manadatsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, nivasishyasi mayyeva, ata urdhvam na samshaya. Mayyeva manadatsva, place your mind on me. Mayi buddhim niveshaya, let your intellect also enter into me. Then you become one with me. This is what I do. What will Lord do? My job is to surrender. First, surrendering my likes and dislikes and my gross ego. The second stage is surrender my ego, that is, which results from identification with this personality. When I am doing this, Lord, do you do something or not? Yes, I also do. Ahantva sarapapebhya mokshayishyami. I will. And this dharma and adharma, both of these are born of the sense of ego, and that is born of ignorance. Ahantva sarapapebhya mokshayishyami. I will free you from all the sins. Meaning, well, I will. So understand that he is also involved in this process. Thank God. We should thank him that we have not only one ear. Let's see what happens with this person now. It is said that when the devotee takes one step, the Lord takes 10 steps. Ahantva sarapapebhya mokshayishyami. I will release you, free you from all the sins. Meaning that, what's the cause of the sin? Ignorance. I will release you or free you from ignorance. I will dispel the ignorance in your heart. And this was also said in the 10th chapter, which we referred to earlier also. Lord Krishna says in the 10th chapter that when I find that my devotees are totally committed to me, and they just worship me for the sake of love. So I find that they are worshipping me for the love for me. They don't want anything else from me. Mat chittaha, mat gata pranaha, bodhayantah parasparam. The devotees are described there. Mat chittaha, the chitta or the mind also in me. Mat gata pranaha, the prana sense organs also are functioning for my sake. Bodhayantah parasparam, whenever they talk to each other, I am the subject matter. Kathayantasya mam nityam, whenever they get the opportunity, they sing my glories to others. So thus when I find that my devotees are totally committed to me, buddhi yogam danami, then I give them the yoga of buddhi, impart them the knowledge. Tesham evanukampasam aham ajnanajam tamah nashayami atmabhavastah jnanadipena bhasvata. So, motivated by or moved by out of compassion for them, I dispel the darkness of ignorance in the heart by lighting the lamp of knowledge. So this is what Lord has to do. Light the lamp of knowledge and dispel the darkness of ignorance. And that's the ultimate sin. So if you want to use the word sin for Vedanta, ignorance. So you are all sinners, you are all ignorant. The teaching started also, Ashochan Anvashochastvam. In the 11th verse of the 2nd chapter, where Lord Krishna began his Upadesha, began his teaching. And the 66th verse in the 18th chapter, he continues to say a few verses, but the teaching is completed here. Ashochan Anvashochastvam, hey Arjuna, you are grieved. Which means that the Gītā Shastra is, the Upadesha, the teaching of the Bhagavad Gītā is to release the human being from grief. Grief means from sorrow, from sadness, from unhappiness. Release from all unhappiness, all pain, all sorrow. But Swamiji, I am not interested merely in becoming free from sorrow. I want to be happy. Well, that is also fine. But as it is that, happiness is your nature. And the sorrow is only obstructing that happiness. So when the obstruction goes away, happiness, which is your nature, automatically becomes evident. And therefore these two things, removal of the sorrow, removing the grief from the heart of the human being. Tarati Shokam Atmavit. We find such a situation in the Upanishad also, when sage Narada approaches Sanat Kumara. Adi Bhagavo Brahmeti, please teach me Brahman. Then what do you know? You first tell me what it is that you know, and then sage Narada relates a whole list of things that he knew. He was one of the most learned persons. Having said what all I know, every Veda I know, all the Puranas and all Itihasa and Vyakarana, everything, all other kinds of things also he knew. He knew the astrology and astronomy, and he knew art and dance and music and everything. Soham Bhagavad Shochami, in spite of being one who is so accomplished, I am still grieving. Tanmam Bhagavan Shokasya Param Tarayatu, the revered sir, may please help me cross this ocean of grief. Shrutam Hetad Bhavadrushebhyah, I have heard, listened to it, I have heard from great sages like you, Tarti Shokam Atmavidyate, that the knower of the self crosses the grief. So knowledge is presented as the solution for the problem, human problem of grief or sorrow. That's all knowledge can do. It can remove the grief, it can remove sorrow. What else is to be done anyway? You surrender yourself to me. That is how Arjuna said. Yashreyasyaat nischitam bruhitan me sishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. I am your disciple. I am surrendered to you. Please teach me that by which I... So Arjuna, you are a mumukshu, and therefore there is no reason why you should not get the knowledge. Mahasuchaha, please do not grieve. First is renunciation of external forms of worship involving duality, and taking up the worship at the level of non-duality, meaning discovering the non-duality or non-separation from the Lord, which involves another renunciation. Renunciation in the form of giving up identification with this personality and discover the nature of person. There is none other than Brahman. That is called Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. May you know me as one non-dual, as your own self. And I will release you by dispelling the darkness of ignorance from your heart. Tena labhyah tasya atma vyurunate tanum swam. When this devotee chooses the Lord as all that he wants, then says that the Lord of the self also reveals his true nature to him. And with this wonderful promise, ahantva sarvapapebhyah mokshayishyami, I will free you from all the sins. Do not grieve, don't worry, I will do that. That's a great promise. With that, Lord Krishna concludes the teaching. Having thus concluded everything, now what follows is Shastra Sampradaya Vidhim. What follows is certain procedural things which are necessary to be said. And that is, what is the Vidhi? What's the method of passing on this knowledge? Now that Lord Krishna has imparted knowledge to Arjuna, then Lord Krishna also instructs certain rules that should be observed in passing on this knowledge. Shastra Sampradaya Vidhi. Vidhi is the method of Sampradaya, of passing on this knowledge of the scriptures. And that's what now Lord Krishna says. So the teaching is concluded with the verse 66. Na bhaktaya kadachana, na bhaktaya kadachana, na cha shushrushabe vachyam, na cha shushrushabe vachyam, na cha mamyo. Idante. See here, Arjuna, this scripture, the Bhagavad Gītā, samsara vichitte, in order to dispel the ignorance and dispel therefore the sorrow that is born of ignorance. So this teaching that I have imparted to you, so as to eliminate all the sorrow. This teaching, navacham, this should not be imparted to these people. It is said in sort of a negative way. Idam navacham. This Gītā Shastra, this teaching of Gītā should not be imparted to these people. Atapaskaya navacham. Atapaskaya, the one who is devoid of austerities. So certain conditions are stated here as to who is the one who is qualified to receive this teaching. Atapaskaya, taporahitaya. So the one who is devoid of tapas, devoid of austerity in the life. That is one whose life is characterized by indulgence. One whose life is devoid of any self-control. So one of the first requirements is that there must be self-control in the life. There must be freedom from what we call indulgence. And therefore, I consume from the resources of nature the minimum that I require and no more. Non-violence. So that my life must demonstrate a non-violence. That I do not trample upon the rights of others. I do not deprive others of what they should have by unnecessarily consuming, more than what I need. So this is called tapasya, austerity, a life of austerity. Or we may call religious discipline also. It's a life of religious discipline. So one who doesn't have that religious discipline, to that person, this teaching should not be imparted. Suppose there is a person who has this austerity or religious discipline, but that person may not have devotion. Na abhaktaya. One who is devoid of devotion, one who is not a devotee, to him also this should not be imparted. So devotion also is required. Devotion to whom? Devotion to the teacher, devotion to the scriptures, devotion to the Lord. Primary devotion to the Lord. Because the teaching is in order to attain, in order to know the Lord. So there must be devotion to the one whom I want to know. And so I want to study Bhagavad Gītā, but I don't believe in God. I don't care for God. That doesn't make sense because Bhagavad Gītā is scripture pertaining to God. Not only is told by the God, but the God is subject matter here, and therefore there must be devotion for the one whom I want to know. So devotion to the Lord. Also there should be devotion to the scriptures because scriptures are the means of knowledge which in fact unfold the nature of Lord. Again that requires devotion to the teacher because teacher is the one who unfolds the scriptures. So devotion to the teacher, devotion to the scriptures, devotion to the Lord. Devotion involves love and reverence and service, all these are involved. So here basically devotion, reverence and the love. So the one who is devoid of reverence, there must be reverence for the scripture and reverence for the teacher and reverence for the Lord. If one does not have that, this should not be imparted to him. Nacha ashushrushabe vachyam. Shushrusha. Shushrusha, the word has two meanings. One is one who does not render service. Shushrusha. That means this must be a service-oriented person. One who is willing to serve his teacher, one who is serving the Lord, and so one with the spirit of service. One who doesn't have that spirit, to him it should not be imparted. Or Shushrusha also means Shrotum Ichcha, the desire to listen. So one who doesn't want to listen, of course he won't come to you anyway, there is no question, but anyway, so one who doesn't want to listen. Or, better than that, one who does not render the service. to that person also, he must be service-minded, he must be a person who must be humble. And who has a value for serving the teacher, for serving the scriptures, for serving the Lord. And finally, all of this can be there, but still it should not be imparted to one who is abhyasuyaya, one who cavils at me, one who finds faults at me. Somebody said, Swamiji, when in the beginning I listened to the Gītā, I never liked the chapters 7 to 12. They are chapters about Lord. Because look at this Krishna, all the time is I am this and I am that and I am this, and what a great ego, big ego he must have had. Mattah parataram nanyat kinchidasti Dhananjaya. Hey Dhananjaya, there is nothing other than me. You must have big ego. I didn't like those chapters. And subsequently then when that person understood what this means, then I love those chapters now. But sometimes to a person with a shallow, superfluous mind, it may appear as though the teacher of Bhagavad Gītā, Lord Krishna, all the time claims his own glory. He seems to glorify himself. Self-adulation, and therefore it is just self-glorification. And therefore one who looks upon me, the teacher of Bhagavad Gītā, as nothing but glorifying myself, and therefore he finds fault, he cavils at me, even to that person also, this should not be imparted, because there must be reverence for the one, the teacher. And unless we can tune up with Lord Krishna, unless we have the reverence for him, his words will not have an impact upon us. So my identification with Arjuna, that I become Arjuna when I look upon Lord Krishna as my teacher, as well as look upon him as God. Meaning that here Arjuna, when you find these qualities, that there is a person who lives a life of austerity, the person who has the devotion for the Lord, the scriptures and the teacher, the person who is always ready to serve, and one who does not find fault, does not cavil, he is a person to whom this teaching must be imparted. That's what it means. But if you find these qualities absent, this teaching should not be imparted. It is not to deprive people of that, but then it is always thought that scriptural teaching should be imparted to those who are deserving and should not be imparted to those who are not deserving. Don't throw your, don't throw your jewels to the swines or something like that. Don't scatter your pearls before the swines. Yeah. And so this pearl should not be just scattered. That is what Lord Krishna says. This should be imparted only to the one who is deserving. Having said that, now Lord Krishna praises the person who imparts this knowledge. He loves him, and that is what is said in the verse 68. Ya imam paramam guhyam, ya imam paramam guhyam, madbhakteshva vidhasyate, madbhakteshva vidhasyate, bhaktim mai param krutva, bhaktim mai param krutva, mame vaishyasya samshayah, mame vaishyatya samshayah. Yaha, the one, imam paramam guhyam madbhakteshu abhidasyate. Now Lord Krishna talks about this, the one who is imparting this knowledge. First was told that this knowledge should not be imparted to one who doesn't have their proper qualification. Now that when you impart the knowledge, how about the one who is disseminating this knowledge? Yaha imam paramam guhyam. This great, the most profound secret, the most exalted secret, or most profound secret, that is Bhagavad Gītā, which is in the form of the dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. Mad bhakteshu abhidasyati. One who imparts his teaching to my devotees. So we should understand other things also. Because the first verse talked about 4 qualifications. Although Shankaracharya says that since the second verse only mentions bhakta of the devotion, that means that one thing is enough, even if you don't have other things. Suppose the religious austerities are not there, and suppose even the attitude of service is not there, or suppose other things are not there, even then, if there is, of course, obviously a cavilling at the Lord will never work. That should certainly not be there. But in case other qualifications are lacking somewhat, but there is abundance of bhakti, then also it is an adequate qualification for imparting this knowledge. So one who disseminates this knowledge, or imparts this knowledge, or teaches this knowledge to my devotees. How does he do that? Bhaktim mai param krutva. So, while he is imparting knowledge is that both knowledge in terms of the words as well as in terms of meaning. So, granthatah arthatascha. Imparting knowledge meaning that he makes sure that the devotees or the listeners, they understand the words as well as the meaning. That is called imparting this. It's not that you just come and talk and then say something regardless of whether the people listen to it or they understood or not. But then teaching means that making a sincere attempt, in fact, to convey the meaning. So one who does that. And while he's doing it, what is his own attitude? Bhaktim mai param krutva bhagavatah param guroho achyutasya shushrusha maya kriyate. So thus, one who disseminates his knowledge, in his mind there is this spirit or this attitude, that by this, that when I am sharing this knowledge with others, in that process that I am offering my devotion to the Lord Achyuta, to the Lord Narayana, to Lord Krishna. So in the spirit of devotion he does it. Because it is possible that you may do this for various other reasons also. A person can teach this or impart this teaching, pass this on to others, even to glorify himself. He may have some ulterior motives as well. Labha, khyati, puja, there may be some gain, there may be some fame, there may be some respect that you might be seeking through that. No. So when this teaching is imparted to my devotees, in this spirit, that by doing this, I am only performing my act of worship to the Lord Narayana. So I am serving the Lord by this act of mine of the nature of sharing or passing on this knowledge to others. Mai param bhaktim krutva. So with the spirit of ultimate or highest devotion to me, one who passes on this knowledge to my devotees. What does he attain? Mameva eshyati asamshaya. There is no doubt that he will reach me alone. He will come to me. Who will come to him? The one who imparts this knowledge to others. So this is very important. So continuing this parampara. Parampara means this lineage. So that must be continued. This tradition should be continued. And therefore, one should first of all gain this knowledge and also then sincerely attempt to pass on or continue this tradition. So this is the result that comes to the one who is in giving this knowledge. And again, praising him, Lord Krishna says in the verse 69, Nacha tasman manusyeshu kaschin me priyakrittamah kaschin me priyakrittamah bhavita nacha me tasmad bhavita nacha me tasmad anyah priyataro bhuvi anyah priyataro bhuvi. And Lord Krishna says, Manusyeshu madhye tasmat me na kaschit priyakrittamah. And there is no one among men more dearer to me than this one, this my devotee, who disseminates his knowledge. So the one who disseminates knowledge also is a devotee of the Lord, and those to whom the knowledge is disseminated also are the devotees. So this devotee of mine who imparts this knowledge to others, there is no one dearer to me among all the human beings. So Lord Krishna says, these devotees are always dear to him. But he is a devotee, a special kind of a devotee, who passes on this knowledge with devotion. There is none who is more dearer to me than that. In the present. How about the future? Bhavita nachame tasmad anyah priyataro bhavi. Arjuna, I can tell you that in this world, there will not be anyone in the future also who will be dearer to me than him. In the present, he is the dearest to me among all the human beings. In future also, there will not be anyone who will be dearer to me than him. In these two verses, Lord Krishna praises the teacher of Bhagavad Gītā. How about the people who are listening? How about those who are studying Bhagavad Gītā? Well, they are also very exalted people. So verse 70 says that Adhyeshyate chaya imam dharmyam samvadamavayoh jnana yajnena tenaham ishtasyamiti me matihi Adhyeshyate, and one who studies. See, adhyayana means studying as well as reciting. So one who studies or recites this avayoho dharmyam samvadam, this dialogue between the two of us, which is dharmyam dharmat anapetam, so that which is conducive to virtue, conducive to dharma, not different from dharma. This dialogue between the Lord Krishna and Arjuna is pertaining to dharma as well as itself is dharma. Jnana yajna, so one who studies this Bhagavad Gītā, he will have done what? Jnana yajnena tenam ishtasyam. I will look upon that study of Bhagavad Gītā as being worshipped by the devotee through what we call Jnana yajna. So study of Bhagavad Gītā is called Jnana yajna. The sacrifice in the form of knowledge. So that would constitute the worship of me. Meaning that study of Bhagavad Gītā constitutes the worship of the Lord, the worship of the nature of Jnana Yajna, the sacrifice of knowledge. Ishtasyamiti matihi. So this is my conclusion, this is my opinion that I would look upon that as worship to me. That means one who studies Bhagavad Gītā, that very study, I look upon that as worship to me. So even if other forms of worship are not there, this one thing is there that one is committed to and devoted to studying. Even that also is one of the highest forms of worship of the Lord. This is what Lord Krishna says. So that is the study. How about the one who just listens? How about him? So in the verse 71 we are told, Shraddhavananasuyascha Shrunuyadapi yo naraha sopi mukta shubhan lokan prapnuyat punya karmanam Shrunuyadapi yo naraha, one who listens to the Bhagavad Gītā. And in the listener, these qualifications are expected. Shraddhavan, one who is possessed of Shraddha, a trust of the faith, as we said again in the Gītā and in the Lord Krishna, as well in the scriptures. Anasuyascha, and one who is not cavilling, that is one who doesn't look upon the Lord Krishna as an ordinary human being. If he was an ordinary human being and he proclaimed all his glories, then definitely we would have to question that. But one who doesn't look upon Lord Krishna as a human being, as an ordinary human being, he is avatara, he is incarnation of the Lord. And therefore, one who looks upon the teacher of Bhagavad Gītā, that is the speaker of Bhagavad Gītā, the knowledge of the teacher of Bhagavad Gītā, namely Lord Krishna, as the very Lord. And therefore, has a reverence and devotion for him. At the same time, one who has a trust in the words, then alone we can have the Shraddha in the words. So with that, when one listens to the Bhagavad Gītā, sopi muktaha, he also will be shubhan lokan punya karmanam prapnuyat. He also will gain those auspicious words of those who have done the good karma. The idea is that listening to Bhagavad Gītā is one of the most exalted acts that you can perform. It's a punya karma. It's an act that actually generates a lot of virtue. And that's how one becomes qualified to go to those worlds or realms which are attained by very virtuous people. So this is how Lord Krishna in these verses also tells us the method of imparting this knowledge, as well as the gain, the reward that comes as a result of imparting the knowledge, or studying, or even listening to the scripture. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri